Alright, everyone, we start off today talking about how Donald Trump is probably going to win re-election. It's something that can't be said enough because there's still a lot of people who don't expect that. Like, a lot of the people on the left, there's a lot of bravado involved. They're like, well, it should be easy. Donald Trump is, legendarily unpopular, which isn't entirely true. He's in the mid-40s. It's mediocre, but it's not lowest quarter of presidential rankings. It's not at Jimmy Carter attempted re-election levels. It's not at W after FEMA levels. It's survivable. It's on the edge, but it's survivable. Here's the thing, though. The political paradigm has shifted such that the Democratic Party has gone so far left that it's not quite like when Obama was being reelected. His approval was at like 47, which again was mediocre. A lot of people are saying, well, he won't be reelected. Only one person's been reelected when they're at that level. Of course, Obama was number 2. They're making the same mistake now and assuming that if Trump comes into the election below 47, he's got no chance. That might be the case if he had a contender against him that was at least moderately good. But the problem is that he doesn't. There is no Democratic contender to run against him. I keep looking at the field. I'm almost trying to find a way in which the Democrats win at this point. And the reason I'm doing that is because I realize even if there's a 99% chance Trump is reelected, that 1% exists. And I want all contingencies available. I want to be able to make a good guesstimation of what's going to happen on election night, because guess what? I want to be right. I don't care who wins. Ultimately, my goal at the end of the night in 2020 is going to be to have guessed every state properly in the primaries for the Democrats, to have guessed the states, to have guessed the composition of the House and Senate and who's in the White House at the end of the night. That's my big goal. If I can do that, I really don't care who wins. Ultimately, that's my job in the analysis that I do. Do I have a bias? Yeah, a little bit, because, all the Democrats want to tax me a lot more. Whether they pass that legislation or not successfully remains to be seen. Trump wants to save me money, so I'm going to default to the person who wants to put more of my own money back in my wallet and out of the pocket of some bureaucrat. Beyond that, though, it's like, I'm looking at the field. I keep going through it. Like, mentally, every single day I have to look at these people. I follow them all on Twitter. And I see the things that they put out and how cringy they are and how nobody cares or interacts with it. It's like Elizabeth Warren has to fight to scrape together 1,000 people to like a Twitter status when she comes out swinging and actually does get fiery. And when it's more boring, you can forget about it. I'm looking at people like Bloomberg. Bloomberg just gets into the race. Here's the weakness of Kamala's campaign. I pointed this out the other day. One of her top staffers resigns, puts out a letter publicly saying her campaign is basically a sham at this point and everyone's being horribly mistreated and she's dysfunctional. To join what they think is a viable campaign, the viable campaign is Bloomberg of all people, a 74-year-old man who only got in the last couple of weeks. He only just barely inked the paperwork to actually run in New Hampshire. He's not even planning to actively campaign there or in Iowa. He's waiting till the Super Tuesday states, of all things, while pumping everything full of ads. I guess he's like Buttigieg, he's expecting Biden to crumble and people look at the far leftists, get afraid, and suddenly, magically, they'll back Michael Bloomberg and his stop and frisk policies. I don't think so. So I'm looking at that old crazy rich dude, the old incoherent dude, the old socialist dude who just had a heart attack, the old woman who grifted off the socialists' candidacy, his platform, and then a dude who's not even 40 who has basically no political experience. And he's the viable one. He's the most, of the top 5, of which Kamala is now arguably no longer a part, replaced by either Yang or Bloomberg, depending on the poll you consult, it's Buttigieg. An openly gay 38-year-old man with the following credentials. He was mayor of South Bend for a term, I think. That's his credentials. You're going to put him up against Donald Trump, who's the incumbent, who's saved people money on their taxes. A lot of people don't even believe it, but the middle class has gotten considerable tax relief. Although the job is hardly done, he's definitely helping the Rust Belt. He's moving towards building border defenses. It's funny. On a given day, the legacy media can't choose whether he hasn't actually built any new wall or whether the fact that he is building the wall is racist. The fact is that it is going up, but you got to retrofit existing barriers first. So it's helpful if you keep that in context. No new wall has gone up. Yeah, you do that after you've already fixed the parts that are already dysfunctional, where you've already sort of got the infrastructure to do it more quickly. You've already got a road built there. Good. That means you can get the supplies into place to replace that aging 10-foot tall chain link fence that stops absolutely nobody. You can hurl a baby over that like a fucking football, dude. Into the waiting arms, preferably of a trampoline, a net of some sort. Who knows, though, when you're that desperate, it's like, anything goes. Use a catapult, I suppose. By the way, no shitting, the drug lords down there, they have had like catapults dragged behind pickups in order to launch bundles of drugs over the border. Quite sophisticated. A little bit harder when the wall's, 30 feet tall instead of just 10 feet tall, but we'll see what happens. I guess if you've got gaps in the wall, you just put the drugs through. That'll be interesting. That'll be the next big thing. They'll have to have a secondary barrier, I'm sure. Anyway, when I'm looking at the field, I can see why some people are now demoralized, people on the left, and that is true. Increasingly, the Democrats are not expecting to win the election. They're looking at a crowded field in which nobody really stands out. I think Sanders does to his fans. That's to his credit, but he doesn't stand out to the center left. He scares the center left. He doesn't stand out to independent voters. By and large, they reject socialism by massive margins. You got to understand, when we're talking about far leftism in this country, it is accepted almost. A sizable minority of millennial and Gen Z voters will accept socialism. It's not even a majority, it's just a sizable minority. The youth votes at lower rates, traditionally, in every election. So Bernie Sanders' coalition is less likely, despite their fervor, they're less likely to actually go cast a vote for him. The big problem for the Democrats could be if he gains traction by maybe a surprise second place finishing in Iowa, wins New Hampshire, he goes into the other states looking good. If he squeaks in a win maybe in Nevada or comes in a close second in them, Biden's incoherent, so he's not, that big a match. Super Tuesday could be a free-for-all. The chaos could easily last through April or May. It could be very, very difficult. You definitely have a contested convention. You probably will at this point. You've got enough people with enough viability that it's going to be so much a mess that whoever goes into the actual nomination and then they get nominated to go into the general against Trump is going to be so embittered and have so many people bitter at them for having made their candidate lose, or you're actually a Russian pawn because you said Orange Man not bad once 30 years ago. That's going to be funny to see. More people are expecting him to win. Also, on the Republican side, you can feel an energy. It's similar to the levels of 2016. The energy behind Trump has begun to return, and the reason for this is simple. The Democrats flubbing impeachment. Because all of his core fans started talking about a coup, and now the Democrats twice have walked back their efforts. It's a slow, convoluted, boring process, so it's not exactly helping him with the left-wing voters. They want a quick removal. They wanted Schiff to go in there and say, Orange Man bad, here's the charge, we're voting, simple vote is held, we've impeached the bastard, we're sending it to the Senate, and we're threatening to get rid of anyone by fire and sword if they vote against it. That's what the far-left voters wanted. Well, they're obviously not going to get that. There's no protocol in place to deliver that sort of actual coup, and therefore Pelosi and all the others have failed. Again, support for impeachment peaked before impeachment proceedings were even official, so we've got to keep that in mind. Lacking that, lacking an actual scandal, something tangible that a centrist or independent voter would accept as evidence of wrongdoing, and lacking any fervor for that, the Democrats probably lose. They haven't bothered to develop a full platform. The only exception is Bernie Sanders, and his platform pisses people off more than anything. Oh, well, all of my proposals are popular. Yes, a minority of people within the country are very positive towards the idea of free shit, which is tax increases across the board for anyone who's productive. The problem is when you conglomerate them all together and then you hand them the bill, you're talking about, I don't know, 60-70% tax rate on the middle class maybe? Again, you keep giving us the numbers on each individual program. What about all of the programs combined, Bernie? You're not willing to do that because you realize you'd need more than 100% of the nation's productivity to pay for it. Well, obviously, that money has to come from somewhere, so you're talking about massive tax rates plus hyperinflation, I suppose. Wonderful, yeah. People have good dental care. People will, for a limited period of time. By the way, once you throw open the borders, you'll be squandering all of that extra taxation on people who don't even get to come to the country legally. I guess there'll be a lot more dreamers, that's for sure, under a Bernie Sanders presidency. You see, the problem is that platform sounds okay to a self-proclaimed progressive, but they're a tiny minority. They're not even the majority of the Democrats. They're the second largest block of Democrats. The biggest block of Democrats are essentially business neoliberals who would think fondly of Reagan if he had a D after his name. They're basically, fiscally, they're not really liberals at all. They don't want to rock the boat too much. They'll go into a few wedge issues to get elected against some Republican with fundamentally the same fucking platform, and that's about it. The far left is tiny, really. It's maybe on par with the hippie movement at this point. There's certainly more of them than there have been for the last few decades because of social and economic upheaval in the wake of 9/11 especially, and the Bush, fiscal collapse and the Obama fiscal collapse. Because of that, neoliberalism lost favor. It's just a temporary thing. It's a temporary paradigm shift. It's no different than Occupy, really. And it'll go the way of the dinosaur within the next decade. People who are sitting there, we'll go far left forever. Eventually they're gonna start killing people for being white. I said, no, they're not gonna do that. They're gonna start profiling. You'll lose your job if you have a MAGA hat. No, they won't do that because they don't have the strength. What, a bunch of wheelchair-bound soy drinkers are gonna overthrow the U.S. government? They're gonna fight the U.S. military? Really? Yeah, I don't fucking think so. That's about all. Peace out.